You're listening to a punk movie review right here on the Prairie Punk Press Network.
I rest my case on this. In a country of lost souls, rebellion comes hard. But in a religiously oppressive city, which half its population isn't even of that religion, it comes like fire.
Your little down.
Hi everybody, you're listening to Punk Movie Review. We are on episode 6, and this time we're doing SLC Punk as promised. And this is the longest stretch of time we've gone without doing a punk movie review. Our last one was from Halloween 2024. I'm sorry that we went this long without doing a punk movie review. We're going to start doing them more often, as I think we both love doing these, but we got bogged down with life and family and other jobs and stuff like that. But we are going to do a better job of doing these more often. So this is SLC Punk. It was released officially in 1998, actually, in Germany, and then released in the United States in 1999 at the Sundance Film Festival, which is appropriate because that is also in Utah. And it was the debut movie for the 1999 Sundance Film Festival. This is directed by James Merendino, and as far as I can tell, this is probably the movie he's most well known for. I took a look through his filmography, and I didn't really recognize much else other than the sequel to this movie, which we'll definitely get into a little bit. I think at its core, this is a coming-of-age movie. That's kind of how I read into it. But I'll give you a quick synopsis, and I made sure I copied there's a lot of synopsises online that are multiple paragraphs, so I just found the shortest one. So, in the early 1980s, Steve-O and Heroin Bob are the only two dedicated punks in conservative Salt Lake City. This synopsis is the official one on the IMDb page. It's only sort of correct. It takes place in 1985, so I'd call that the mid-1980s, the exact midpoint, actually. And as we can see from the movie, they are not the only two dedicated punks in Salt Lake City. So we'll get into that. My name is Neckbone.
Hi, I'm Jerbear, and Yoda is the Nancy Pelosi of the Jedi Council.
Agree 100%. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
We'll need to do a Star Wars movie at some point now for Punk Movie Review.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
For the record, Jedi are cops.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So I think if we are going to do a Star Wars movie for Punk Movie Review, I feel like it's got to be Rogue One. I don't know. Do you agree? Is there another one you think would fit better?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one.
Okay. Yeah. It's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, it's really good. And the show Andor is probably my favorite of the shows.
Yeah. I would say Andor is a movie or a TV show that is punk as fuck. So,
yeah, for sure.
No punk music, but it just in its politics and attitude is punk as fuck. So
this movie is maybe not as punk as Rogue One.
No, it is
has
not
punk rockers in it.
So, yes, superficially speaking, it is a punk movie. Superficially speaking, yes. You see mohawks.
I have a quick question about it, and I don't know if you know. Mm-hmm. I didn't bother to look it up, but it's based off of the autobiography of the real person who is Steve-O.
Yes.
I don't know anything about the book or anything like that, but I have heard that in the reality of the story that Bob did not die.
Yeah.
And that they took some liberties with the movie, but I don't know how much or what all.
So I also thought that this was autobiographical. That's what I went into this thinking. So it later came out that Merendino created the film based on experiences growing up in Salt Lake City, but it is not autobiographical. What he did was he based the characters on people he knew in Salt Lake City, but the story itself is made up.
Oh, weird.
Because I thought about that as I watched it, because I was like, wait, the guy who made this movie is a film director, not a lawyer. I was like, well, maybe they just took that one liberty. Like, made himself from a film director into a lawyer, which would be weird for an autobiographical movie. That'd be an odd choice. But yeah, Steve-O is based loosely on himself, but he is not specifically exactly like Steve-O. I mean, they even took some liberties with, at one point, Christopher McDonald, who plays Steve-O's dad, you hear him say, like, how can I be a fascist? I'm Jewish. Whereas Merendino grew up Catholic and went to Catholic school. So
right,
they changed several things. Christopher McDonald, love him.
Yeah.
He was one of the highlights of this movie for me.
Just about everything he does.
Yeah. Yep.
Shooter
McGavin, man. Like, that's, I mean, yeah. Love Christopher. love me some Christopher McDonald. So, yeah, like I said, this I viewed this as a coming-of-age movie. That's kind of how it read to me. We talked about previously, we saw it in the early 2000s, late 90s, I guess.
Late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, we were talking about it the other day. I think the last time I probably saw this was either early on living in Lawrence or still living in Kansas City, which would put it around 99, 2000, the last time I saw this movie.
I remember thinking this movie was not great, but before I watched it again, I had really hoped that maybe upon reflection and rewatching it as an older, now more experienced person, I might see it differently and appreciate it more. But I got to be honest, if anything, I think I appreciate it less.
Oh, for sure. And we talked like a tiny bit yesterday about it before I rewatched it. I watched it last night with my wife. Yeah. And you didn't reveal any details of your thoughts on it other than like it didn't hold up.
Right.
And I watched it, and at the beginning of the movie I was like, I was enjoying it. I was having a pretty good time at the beginning. I was like, yeah, I remember this. This is funny. Yeah. Some laugh out loud moments. But as the movie progressed, it got worse and worse and worse. And I think the biggest problem with it for me is how little thought out the politics are. Yeah. Like he goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And on about anarchy. And he doesn't know what the fuck anarchy is.
Right.
And perhaps it is youthful naivete.
Yeah.
That he doesn't understand what it actually is, but it really just felt kind of cringy to me. And I watched them and thought, I'd said out loud to my wife, I was like, damn, these dudes are a bunch of fucking idiots.
Right. And, the whole time I'm thinking the ironic thing about their characters is this whole time they're droning on about posers when, I mean, they're posers. They're total posers.
They're the biggest fucking posers I've ever seen.
Right.
I like Bob. I don't know that Bob is. He seemed the most punk of.
He did. And I love Michael Gourgeon played Bob, and I thought of all the performances, his was one of the best ones.
Yeah.
I thought that he played the character really well. I thought he was one of the standout performances. And there were a lot of good performances. But boy, at the beginning of the movie, it says 1985 Salt Lake City. And if they had not put 1985 on the screen for me to read, I would not have thought it took place in 1985. It felt very 90s. The only time I thought, oh, this is the 80s is the scene where Devon Sawa's character, Sean, is running around chasing his mom with a knife because he is on like 200 hits of acid or whatever the fuck, 20 hits of acid. I forget how many. And she's wearing those giant shoulder pads and this flowery like 80s dress, and I'm like, oh, that looks 80s to me. That is literally the only time in the entire movie where I thought, okay, that feels like the 80s. That's it.
Yeah, they did a really poor job of capturing the 80s.
Yeah.
And I will say it again, I've said it a million times. I really think it's because Matthew Lillard does not talk like an 80s punk rocker from Salt Lake City.
No. Well,
He talks like a 90s dude from fucking LA.
And Matthew Lillard, now, this movie came out, it was shot in 98, came out in 99, officially, well, it came out in the United States, 1999. And, you got to remember, Scream was several years before this. He was at the time, the biggest star in the movie. And you could probably argue even today he's probably the biggest, maybe competing with Jason Segel a little bit. I mean, like the biggest stars. Jason Segel at that time was an unknown.
Right, he was.
But he got big after that. But I will say, like, I mean, Matthew Lillard was a big star, and the budget for this movie was only $600,000. This is not a big budget movie. What's that?
No, it's not. I said, I wonder how much of that went to him.
I mean, at least half of that must have gone to Matthew Lillard. He had already done Scream, and he was in Scream 2. This was before Scooby-Doo, obviously. He went on to play Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, which I thought he was perfectly cast for. And I like Matthew Lillard 99% of the time. I think he's a good actor. I just don't think he was right
for the role.
Right. This is the 1% of the time I don't like him, is this movie.
Yeah. Another part just regarding Matthew Lillard and his character. The flashback to when he had a mohawk, that was one of the worst skull cap mohawks I've ever seen in film.
You can tell that it's a skull cap.
You could see the wrinkles.
Yeah.
It was so bad. And,
right.
I mean, maybe that's just $600,000 budget.
Right.
I can almost overlook it, but instead of giving him a stupid, shitty fake mohawk, just have him have blue hair.
Right. It's fine.
Like the rest of the movie. You don't have to do that. There's plenty of other people in the movie with mohawks. You don't have to put a big, fake, stupid, cartoonish mohawk on him.
And you can still have him dress, because obviously he was dressed differently when he was younger. He's dressed like more,
street punk.
Yeah, more street punk. And you can still have him dressed differently and maybe make his hair green instead of blue to show that time has passed or something like, something like that. But that mohawk was, I even remember thinking that like back in like 2000.
Oh, yeah.
Like being like,
horrible.
That's the shittiest mohawk I've ever seen in my life. What the fuck is that?
Like you could go to Spirit Halloween and get a better fake mohawk than they used in that movie.
Right. Do you want to guess how much this made at the box office?
I mean, I would guess it did pretty decently. Compared to the budget, I'll say $10 million.
Oh, wow. You are being very generous. So the box office take was $299,569. It made less than half of the money they spent. So
seriously, I thought it was a lot more successful than that.
So this has
become a cult.
So yeah, this has become. This has garnered a cult following for sure, and I have tried. Like I combed through the internet, looking for a lot of critiques of this movie. Most of the videos and reviews I found of this movie are positive. People love this movie. We might be outliers, actually. Because I don't care for this movie. There's some things that I like about it. And it's got a great cast. Matthew Lillard, like I said, I like him 99% of the time. He was hot off of Scream. He went on to do Scooby-Doo, and then most recently Five Nights at Freddy's. Michael Gourjon.
My kid loves that movie.
I've still never seen it.
Five Nights at Freddy.
Never seen it. But
my youngest loves Five Nights at Freddy, and
funny.
he does a good job. Sorry.
Matthew Lillard is also one of my wife's big crushes, even to this day.
Oh yeah.
She is. She thinks he's just like one of the hottest dudes. And she was like, even as we were watching the movie, she was like, I don't care like how bad of a job he's doing right now. I just like looking at him. And I'm like, that's fair enough. That's if it'll get you to watch this fucking movie with me, cool. Because I don't want to watch it alone. So we do what we have to. Michael Gourjon had been on Newsies before this.
And he hasn't done much, has he?
Not a lot, which is weird because I thought he was one of the standout performances. I would have expected to see him in more stuff. He's also one of the characters who reprises his role in the sequel as a narrative ghost. Because he's obviously, spoiler alert, dies in this movie.
I have not seen SLC Punk 2.
No.
I expect I'll be disappointed. I don't know if disappointed is the right word because I don't have any expectations for it being good at all. But,
now, we will only review SLC Punk 2, which, by the way, the official title is Punk's Dead: SLC Punk 2. We will only review that movie if we have a bunch of people request us to review that movie. Otherwise, we're probably not going to touch it. I feel like we'll say everything we need to say with this one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a very young Jason Segel. I think he was only 18 years old when this came out. And he went on to do Freaks and Geeks right after this, which is a show I fucking love.
Oh, yeah.
He went on to do How I Met Your Mother, which is probably one of the biggest things he was a part of. A show that, reflecting on, is problematic. but he still did a good job. Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I Love You, Man. And, of course, most recently he's been in the TV show Shrinking, which I actually really like.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I think it's on Apple TV.
He did the Muppet movies.
Oh, right. Yeah, he did the Muppet movies, yeah. And then Annabeth Gish was in Mystic Pizza. Her character comes back for SLC Punk 2, but not Annabeth Gish. I feel like they asked Annabeth Gish to come back, and she was like, pass. So they recast her, an actress named Sarah Clark, who looks a lot like Annabeth Gish, was recast in the role.
Interesting.
Jennifer Leon plays Sandy, who's kind of at first the love interest of Steve-O, Matthew Lillard's character. And I'm going to get geeky, Star Trek geeky right now, because everybody knows Jennifer Leon. All the Trekkies know Jennifer Leon from fucking Star Trek Voyager, where she played Kes for the first 3 seasons of the show. And I think she had just come off the show. They wrote her character off of Star Trek Voyager, and I think this was the next thing she did after Star Trek Voyager. And they wrote her character off of Star Trek Voyager because she comes from a species who only lives to be 9 years old. And at the beginning of Star Trek Voyager, she was 3 years old, played by an adult woman, yes, but her character was 3 years old and dated multiple adult men on the show. I'm not going to get into that right now. Reflecting back, that's not a good look for Star Trek producers. Yeah.
Yikes.
If I ever have a Star Trek podcast, we'll get into that a little bit more. Yeah. She was replaced, of course, by Jerry Ryan, who played Seven of Nine. We won't get into Star Trek stuff as much as I'd love to, but Christopher McDonald, also Star Trek alum. He played Lieutenant Richard Castillo in Star Trek The Next Generation, and one of the best episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, where they brought back Denise Crosby's Tasha Yar for one episode. If you watch Star Trek, watch that episode. And if you don't, watch it anyway. Fuck you. Watch it. He was also in Happy Gilmore. He was Shooter McGavin, as we said before. He was in Thelma and Louise, and he was in Requiem for a Dream. He's been in tons of stuff. Christopher McDonald has been acting for decades and is still acting.
He's a phenomenal character actor.
He's amazing. I love him in everything I've seen.
He's an asshole dad, asshole middle-aged guy.
Right.
In just about everything he does. He's hilarious.
He is.
And he eats pieces of shit for breakfast.
We've got Devon Sawa as Sean. He's credited as Sean the Beggar. And he was in, of course, Idle Hands. He's probably most famous for Final Destination. He's currently in the Chucky TV show. He played the Stan character in the Eminem video Stan, where when you say things like I stan Star Trek, or I stan Patrick Stewart, that's where that term comes from. It comes from the Eminem video and song Stan.
For stalker / fan.
Yeah, obsession. Stan. Yeah. I stan.
I thought you were talking about the candies.
No,
that's how much I forgot about Eminem.
Right. And then he also comes back in SLC Punk 2. Adam Pascal which was another way I got my wife to watch this movie. She loves Adam Pascal. If you are into musicals, you will know him from Rent, and I mean, yes, stage and movie. He was in both. And also the musical movie Tick, Tick, Boom, School of Rock. He also comes back for SLC Punk too, but most of his credits are stage. He's a stage actor, I think specifically a musical actor. And that is why my wife knows him. She loves musicals. So she was very excited to see him in this movie. We've got Till Schweiger as Mark. He was the Eastern European guy, the German guy. I most know him from Inglourious Bastards. I think most people probably do. He played Sergeant Stieglitz. And an interesting note, in Inglourious Bastards, even though he is a German actor and has been in tons of German stuff, he refused to do anything before that where he wore a Nazi uniform. And the only reason he wore a Nazi uniform in Inglourious Bastards was because he was infiltrating a Nazi pub and was there to kill Nazis. That is the only reason he agreed to wear that uniform. So I will always love Till Schweiger for that. Reading that, warmed my heart.
Hell yeah.
He also did the German dub for the Hercules animated movie. So he played Hercules in the German dub. And he was in the Tomb Raider movies. But hey, everybody needs a paycheck, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
James Duvall is John the Mod. He was in Donnie Darko, Independence Day, Go, and also in SLC Punk 2. And Summer Phoenix, yes, those Phoenixes. Joaquin, Phoenix, the whole Phoenix family. She is the youngest of the Phoenix family. She had, what a year she had. She was in, I think, like 6 or 7 movies that year. And then she was steadily working until 2003. And in 2003, she met and married or got engaged to Casey Affleck. And then suddenly her acting career fully stopped. And I don't know if that was her choice. I think, wasn't there some shady shit about Casey Affleck that came out?
Yeah, man. Him and his brother both are fucking abusers. And gross.
Yeah.
I have a friend actually who worked in at a recovery place in LA, like addiction type stuff. And this person heard a lot of horrible stories about people in Hollywood, including the Afflecks and Matt Damon, and they had a game involving women and having their way with them, and it's really despicable and gross. So I don't have any respect for fucking any of those dudes.
I think the actress Constance Wu, if I remember right, she came out and said a bunch of stuff about Casey Affleck too. She was, of course, not famous back when stuff happened. I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't know what happened or exactly. I'm sure that somebody who wants to know can probably Google it. But yeah, she was like, yeah, Casey Affleck's a total abuser and takes advantage of people, and so I was disappointed to see that he's still working though. So
yeah, of course he is.
Of course he is.
Says Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
There's no such thing as canceling people. It's only a matter of time before Bill Cosby makes a comeback. I mean, they
let him out of prison already.
Right. Yeah, we're going to see a Netflix special of him pretty soon. In the next 4 years, I predict there's going to be a Bill Cosby comeback special on fucking Netflix. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
He's slowly dying painfully.
Yeah.
But there will be a whitewashing documentary about him, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And probably a biopic.
Right.
Right around Oscar season.
There's no actual canceling. The whole cancel culture thing is just made up. So if you get canceled, you get a Netflix special and get millions of dollars. So, all right, I guess we should get into the actual movie now that we've covered all the background. So the opening scene is 2 rednecks drinking, overlooking Salt Lake City, and our main characters, Steve-O and Heroin Bob, show up and just beat the crap out of them and then run off.
With pipes?
Which...
Pipes or little bats or batons or something.
Yeah. Which seems kind of weird. Like, we definitely had run-ins with rednecks and Nazis and stuff in Wichita. Although I'm all for beating up Nazis unprovoked. I think that's fine.
Right.
Although I don't advocate for violence from a legal standpoint.
Right.
I kind of felt weird about them just beating up these random rednecks that were just hanging out. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's not cool.
That's pretty fucked up. And yeah, I can't think of a time any of us ever initiated violence
Right.
on someone who was not a fucking Nazi.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Nazis provoke people by the fact that they're Nazis. Their ideology is violence. Their ideology is genocide.
Right.
So their existing is violence.
Right.
However, a couple of fucking redneck dudes
Yeah.
sitting on the side of the road drinking some beer, minding their own business. I mean, it's fucking, they're just some dudes. That's not,
Right.
and you know,
I don't,
and maybe it's just the scene. You know, Salt Lake City was known for some pretty violent straight edge crews
yeah.
that would beat the shit out of people for drinking or whatever, but they're not straight edge.
Right.
They're just punk rockers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a little bit antithetical to punk rock, in my opinion. But then again, you know, there were scenes definitely in the 80s that were more violent just for violence sake. I mean, the LA punk scene was very violent.
I mean, they're basically gangs in LA.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if it's the same in Salt Lake, but in Kansas, there was some punk redneck crossover a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, we have Leahy. Leahy was a redneck, and
Yeah.
he hung out and was very punk friendly. Listened to punk music.
He's also a leftist.
Yeah, also a leftist, not right wing, but definitely a redneck. Dave, self-described redneck, definitely a leftist.
Right. Well,
like-
I mean, he knows the actual origin of the term redneck.
Yeah.
And embraced it. You know.
Yeah.
These idiots in this movie clearly don't know the origin of rednecks.
No.
And if they did, maybe they would look more kindly on the term and not use it as a demeaning term that it has become. I mean, he goes on a tirade later about not being a hick.
England was nothing more than a big fucking American state, like North Dakota or Canada. You gotta look at me and you gotta say, hey, buddy, why are you so mad? And I'll tell you. Because for all the fawning that went over the English bands in the SLC, those fucking English chaps could only say shit about us Americans. All we were to them was a bunch of hicks. Well, you know what? I'm not a fucking hick. I don't wear cowboy boots. I hate the fucking rodeo. Horses smell like shit to me, and I never fuck anyone in my own bloodline. By definition, I'm not a redneck, and goddamn it, I ain't a fucking hick.
And you could just call them hicks instead of calling them rednecks.
Right. Right.
But you know, that's clearly way more political theory than this movie thinks about.
Well, yeah, and I tried to be generous and say, okay, well, he's young, and when I was young, I didn't know what a lot of these terms really meant. But at the same time, I thought, you know, maybe I shouldn't be generous because they go out of their way to talk about how actually smart he is, and he got his college degree in pre-law, and he should
Got a 4.0.
he should know this stuff. I mean, I went to college, but I got a 2.75 in fine art from a public institution. Like I wasn't like crushing it in academia like his character.
Yeah, he got into Harvard.
Right. Harvard would not let me in unless my parents dedicated a building or something like that. That would be the only way that I would get into Harvard. I would not get in based on grades. There's no way. So yeah, they went out of their way to set up that he was actually really well informed and smart in every other regard. So I think I am going to take away that generosity and go, he should have known, you know, that there should be class solidarity with rednecks. He should have known what anarchy actually fucking means, which...
Well, throughout the movie, he speaks as an authority on the subject, and perhaps that is youthful hubris.
Yeah.
And he just thinks that he knows everything.
Right.
And I mean, I think at the end of the movie, they kind of call him on it a little bit.
Yeah.
With that girl that questions him.
I have to ask you something.
Yeah, go ahead, ask me.
Well, why do you go out of your way to look like a bum?
I look like a bum?
Well, not in a bad way.
I look like a bum in a good way.
Aren't you, like, rebelling against society?
Put that simply, kinda, yeah. You were saying something about the way I looked.
Wouldn't it be more of an act of rebellion if you didn't spend so much time buying blue hair dye and going out to get punky clothes? It seems so petty. I mean, stop me if I'm being offensive.
Oh, no, go right ahead. That's fine.
You want to be an individual, right? You look like you're wearing a uniform. I mean, you look like a punk. That's not rebellion. That's fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know that the movie really portrays it that way.
Right.
I mean, I think that the movie thinks he is an authority on punk rock and on anarchy.
Right.
And to be honest, I don't think he knows what either of them fucking mean.
Agree. Yeah. The line, and I tried to type this line. I probably could have just Googled it to get a direct quote, but I tried to type it the way that I remember hearing it. So he says, along the lines of, "I am an anarchist. I don't believe there should be rules, only chaos." Which
That's
is
not anarchy.
Not what anarchy is.
Not even a little bit.
That's what I thought anarchy was when I was like 18.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like a dumb kid.
Science says that the world moves from order to disorder, chaos.
They're fools, Steve-O. I mean, life goes from order to disorder to order. Atoms come together randomly to form a structure. An infant is born, right?
Child, yeah.
A child, exactly. It grows, it gets older, it dies, it decomposes back in the ground into chaos. The very thing you're
exactly.
Right, but
anarchy.
Then those atoms are reformed into something else. A blade of grass, a tree, a flower, whatever. The cycle, man.
Sure. Yeah. I thought that once upon a time too. But like I said, they've gone out of the way. He's in his mid-20s at this point. He's finished his bachelor's degree, so he's probably in his mid-20s.
24, 25.
Yeah. And he's highly, well educated. He got good grades. He's smart. He's supposedly, studied these things at some capacity, or should have.
You would think, being a revolutionary anarchist, that while in school he would study political theory.
Yeah.
But it seems like he sure fucking didn't.
Right.
Like he listened to the Sex Pistols and got his ideology there. And it's really funny he talks shit on the Sex Pistols being from England.
Sure, there's a lot more punks than there was 4 years earlier, but there was also as many posers. Posers were people that looked like punks, but they did it for fashion. And they were fools. They'd say, "Anarchy in the UK." You see, posers. Anarchy in UK. Fuck's that? What good is that to those of us in Utah, America? It was a Sex Pistol thing, right? They were from England. They were British. That's what they did. They were allowed to go on about anarchy in the UK. You don't live your life by lyrics. I mean, that's all you ever heard from these trendy fucks. Like, do you hear the new Smiths album? It's fucking terrific. Kids walking around Utah saying terrific, that stupid little English twang.
Yeah.
And there's a scene when, I don't remember where they are. It's early on in the movie. He does a Johnny Rotten pose when he's in his checkered suit jacket.
Mm-hmm.
He puts his arms way up, and puts his arms out like this, and stands while listening to somebody talk. That is a Johnny Rotten pose, and it is fucking unintentionally hilarious.
There is like a weird kind of nationalism to his punk and anarchy theory too. Like, yeah, you're right. He's sucking shit on the Sex Pistols and a lot of British bands because they're from the UK. There are a lot of good reasons to critique the Sex Pistols, but them just being British is not one of the things that you can rightfully critique them on.
Right.
Class solidarity should be across borders. I mean, the whole idea is that,
for sure,
the nationalism is bad. Nation states were a bad idea. And there's so many times in the movie where he's like, talks about how I'm the future of this country. I'm an American. And I'm like, it's oddly, yes, rebellious, but oddly nationalistic to the point where if Steve-O was a real person, if he was a real human being that had been alive and the way he was back then, he would today 100% be like listening to Tim Pool and shit.
Oh yeah. He's 100% a conservative punk.
Yeah, right.
So on their van, they have the Subhumans. Were like name logo, not the skull, but the in the rectangles, Subhumans written there, which surprises me because based on his diatribe about English punk rock, I'll bet that he doesn't know who Crass is.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, maybe. I mean, they've got the Subhumans painted on there, but did they really listen to the Subhumans lyrics? Because maybe he wouldn't be such a fucking dumbass if he had.
And the answer is probably not. Like I've known conservative punks who listen to the Subhumans. I've known conservative punks who listen to Crass. And I just think, how? I mean, and I know we've talked shit on like Rage Against the Machine and stuff in the past, but they're very much a left-wing band.
At least left posturing.
Yeah, at least posturing. Yeah. Their lyrics are left-wing to left-leaning lyrics. And, there are Republican politicians who talk about how great of a band they are. And you just think, like, are you not paying attention to their lyrics?
Crass is weird because, they in one of their songs, I can't remember the fucking song off the top of my head, but there's a lyric about left wing, right wing. It's all the fucking same. And I don't know if they're. It seems very confused because anarchism is intrinsically a left wing ideology.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe it's just to the extreme of there is no authority but yourself.
Yeah.
Don't listen to what pundits on the right wing and left wing say.
Yeah.
But it strikes me as interesting, and it could be confusing for people who aren't as politically savvy to realize that, anarcho-capitalism is not anarchy and can never actually be anarchy. It's just American libertarianism.
Right.
And
you're seeing
but hear that lyric, left wing, right wing, it's all the fucking same, and think, oh yeah, they're on my side. They're anarchists, and my flavor of anarchy, which is corporate control over everything.
Yeah.
Which isn't fucking anarchy.
Right. I mean, we could get into the whole, president of Argentina and stuff, who calls himself an anarcho-capitalist, and the new policies he's trying to implement, like the 12-hour workday and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but
that's
we can get into that in one of our other podcasts. We'll stick to movies here.
It's really hard not to jump into political theory when people talk so much about anarchy and don't know what the fuck it means. It's really difficult for me to not talk about how fucking stupid they are.
That whole debate he has with the guy in the basement, the satanic. I don't know if he's satanic, but he's wearing the pentagram, and they do the satanic ceremony later. The debate he's having with that guy, like it really does feel like a debate between like sophomores or juniors in high school.
Yeah, that is the most pedestrian bullshit I've ever fucking heard.
I thought while watching that scene, I think that Fred Armisen and Carrie Brownstein saw this movie and said, we should do an entire show based on characters like these and call it Portlandia, because it felt like a Portlandia scene. They felt so cartoonish and ridiculous that
the whole movie felt cartoonish and ridiculous.
Is this fucking sketch comedy?
Really wraps it up.
Is this a sketch comedy movie? It felt like it.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what really brings it down. Like I said at the beginning, I kind of enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
Mark is a fucking hilarious character.
Yes. And we all knew, and I thought about that. I was like, we all knew a Mark. Like in Wichita,
Yeah.
like I think in every like 4th tier, 5th tier city, like small city, like on the open plains punk scene, like there was always like that German or Eastern European guy who wasn't a punk, but just lived there
And was older.
lived there, always had access to
Had
drugs.
drugs.
And you always wondered, like, how the fuck did this guy even get here? Why is he here?
Right. And always a little bit afraid of him.
Right. He was always like a little bit on edge, like, and just always like went to all the shows, you know, hung out in the scene, and like was just always around. And you're like, there's just like this like normie Eastern European dude who just hangs out, just like he's in his late 20s. Don't know why he's hanging out with us, but okay.
I had 2 bags of grass in this kitchen. They're always trying to stiff me, you know?
Who is?
Who? Everybody. You know, I give to everybody, Steve. You know that. And they just go ahead and try to take whatever they want. Makes me want to kill. What you have done in the past, believe me. I'm not saying it makes me a man or anything. I'm just passing on the information.
So I did appreciate that. I appreciated that they had a lot of characters who, like, I thought, like, I knew these guys in Wichita. I want to talk about Jason Segel's character, who was,
Right.
I think, the breakout character of the movie.
For sure.
Yeah.
And when we were watching it, I told my wife, I was like, I knew 1,000 of those dudes.
Yep.
They looked clean cut.
Yep.
They looked so sweet, but they were fucking monsters. And if you fucked with somebody, they would destroy them. And they were like always down to fucking fight or protect their friends.
Right.
But they looked like such chill, nice dudes, but they would surprise you by being fucking insane.
Clean cut, polo shirt, khakis, absolute demon in the pit.
Yeah.
Like, it's wild. Like,
And listen to like the hardest fucking music too.
yeah. And I think the thing that I loved about Jason Segel's character is he definitely played it more subtle than anyone else in the fucking movie. Like, he instead of going on some pseudo intellectual rant about punk and what it means to be punk and an anarchist and being wrong about most of it, he like in the scene where Heroin Bob's getting beat up on stage, all he does is he takes off his glasses, stares blankly at the stage, and says, "I got to do something."
Hold these.
More pen you're looking for?
No, I have to go take care of something.
Yep.
And goes and beats the shit out of the bouncer. And I thought, yes.
Right. And then apologizes to him later.
Right. And instead of going on some
what
like
was going on.
pseudo intellectual diatribe about like, well, you know, the tenets of the punk show, blah, 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 blah. No, he just says, I got to do something, and goes and does it. And I was like, that feels authentic. He felt like one of the only authentic characters to me in the entire fucking movie.
Well, and when he was like, I'm gonna go to school for botany, somebody's got to fight for the trees.
Yeah.
And he gets mocked by fucking Steve-O.
Yeah.
Steve-O's a fucking idiot.
Right.
You know, that's also something somebody like that would do. Like,
Yeah.
like I guarantee he listens to Earth Crisis and takes that shit seriously.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I loved his character to the point where I was like, maybe this is just Jason Segel. Maybe he doesn't even realize he's in a movie. He's just there hanging out and just like being himself. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of scene he was in growing up. Yeah, he was in Freaks and Geeks right after this, which was a great show.
Yeah, it was, and his character was one of my favorites. I gotta fucking nitpick the drug scenes. I don't know why filmmakers insist on portraying taking drugs a certain way,
Right.
when it is nowhere near the reality of the situation. Perhaps it's just to make it seem more interesting, to seem more dangerous or sexy or something. But it's a huge pet peeve of mine when I see somebody portray an acid trip as like way more than it actually is.
Right.
That when they trip at the cemetery or whatever, it drove me fucking bonkers. It went on way too fucking long.
Also,
It was
they had
fucking
sex.
Pointless.
They had sex on
who
acid.
wants to do that? Who wants to fucking touch
I was
anybody
when they're
on acid?
I was telling my wife, I was like, I was like,
that sounds disgusting.
now, I would never admit to having taken drugs. I never have. But from what I've heard, acid is the least horny drug that you can possibly take. Like it is. There is nothing you want to do less on acid than fucking have sex. That sounds
Maybe eat.
awful.
Eating might
eat.
be worse.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. They both
smoke
sound really
fuck
terrible.
tons of cigarettes and ramble. Like that's what you do. From what I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is the mods. The other drug thing. The mods giving Heroin Bob. I don't know. I don't remember what they call it. Basically OxyContin.
Yeah.
Everything I know about mods would tell me that they would be on uppers and not on downers.
Right.
So that I was like, maybe it was something that sped up his heart so much that he had a heart attack. But no, it was an opioid. And back in the 80s, mods were not doing fucking downers. They were all about uppers, staying up, dancing, and having a good time that way. Not usually taking downers.
Right.
And shit.
Yeah. Something else I was wondering too. So the apartment that Steve-O and Bob were living in, was that a squat? Do you think that was a squat?
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Originally, when I first watched it.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he talked about it makes me think that it wasn't.
Right. I was wondering, are they paying rent for that place? Because it didn't look really like an apartment. It looked very industrial.
Right, it looked like a warehouse.
Yeah. And it was shot in a warehouse. So
right.
It was in real life a warehouse, but was it an apartment? And also, if it was and they were paying rent, how were they paying rent?
Right.
Yeah. The only I can think of is they cover that Steve-O comes from money, and he was going to college, so presumably his parents were paying for his college. Right. So they may have just been paying for him to have a place to live too, and Bob probably just piggybacked on that because Bob was shown as sleeping in like the living room basically, like the main living space. He just had a mattress on the floor there. So, but they never explained it. They never which is weird because man, oh man, there's just tons of exposition. This movie is almost entirely exposition of just him looking at the camera and just saying stuff.
Breaking the fourth wall for sure. Well, maybe that explains some of his rudimentary political takes, is that he's actually a trust fund kid and doesn't know shit about shit.
Right. He 100% is. Yeah.
It's not really explicitly explained in the movie, and I think a lot of people might miss it.
Yeah. And I realized that college was cheaper in the 80s than it is now. Mm-hmm. And there were more grants and things you could get, but he wouldn't have been eligible for any of that shit.
Right.
Because it's based on your parents' income until you're 25 or something like that.
26.
Yeah, 26. That might explain how Bob was able to go to college, because they said that Bob also went to college, and he didn't have a job. And
he did well.
He came from a poor, we saw his dad. He was poor. Right. He grew up poor as dirt. He didn't have any money, and didn't have a job. So,
right.
Which is also, I thought it was absolute bullshit when they saw. So I think we should talk about Sean Devon Sawa's character, who my wife said reminded her of Ty.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Especially when he goes to that job interview in the mall.
Yeah,
and he just walks in and goes, "Hey,
hey."
She was like, "Oh fuck, Ty." I was like, yeah, pretty much. That was a hilarious scene. I think that for me, that was one of the highlights of the movie. Was just that scene. I thought it was Devon Sawa fucking nailed that scene at least.
For sure. And being on the job hunt right now, I was very happy with that, and I told my wife that that's how I'm going to approach all of my interviews. Just walk in and say, "Hey,
You know, I don't think this job is really going to work out for me. I can't work with people like you.
Yes.
I thought that was fucking awesome. I thought it was bullshit that Jennifer Leon's character, like when Devon Sawa, Sean, is on the street and he's like, I've been begging, man. And she was like, oh, wow, you should get a job. And I was like, I realize she's supposed to be young and I don't know her character's background, but if it's anything like Steve-O's, she also probably comes from a privileged background and doesn't understand, like, it's not that easy to just get a job and have money suddenly.
Especially with mental illness and not having a place to live.
Right, exactly. Because even though Sean was from a middle-class background, he obviously got kicked out of his mom's house because he tried to stab her.
Right.
So he really didn't have anything. I was like, that is a bullshit take, especially for a punk rocker to have.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I also like I hate to fucking do this. Like I am that dude about drugs sometimes, but like that won't make you crazy. You don't get fried out on acid. It doesn't do that. You have to have underlying mental conditions that psychedelics can affect and make worse or make them appear. And, you know, it's not terribly important to the story, but, you know, it's just nitpicking. It kind of, it's a pet peeve I have.
Well, it seemed like they needed Sean to end up a certain way for the plot or whatever the plot was of the movie, the loose plot it had. They
There's
decided
plenty of mental illness in the punk community. You don't have to blame it on drugs.
Right, exactly. Like he could have just been having mental health issues, which were maybe enhanced by the fact that he was doing drugs and already had mental health issues on top of that. And you know, I
think that would make him more sympathetic as a character rather than just some fucking loser who fried himself.
Yeah, the scene after he's been kicked out of his mom's house and he's standing on the chair in the middle of her yard before the cops show up. And he's just standing there and he's like, I'm surrounded by water. The whole time I'm thinking like, that's not how acid works. Yeah.
Right.
Like it felt like a scene that was written by somebody who had never done acid or was at least willing to lie about what happens when you do acid.
And that's usually how those scenes play out. It's written by somebody who doesn't fucking know. And it drives me up a fucking tree.
Right. I did like that. The only thing I liked about that scene, other than the mom's 80s accurate dress, was when the cops show up, Heroin Bob also steps back and raises his hands up. Like, I hate it in movies when the cops show up to arrest somebody and the person they're not there to arrest just is able to just like walk away. I'm like, that's not, the cops would not let you, whether they're there for you or not, they don't give a shit. If you're standing in proximity to anyone they've been called about or just see who's doing something, they're going to get you too. Like, I guarantee, you know, what could have been like a cut scene of Bob being interrogated by the cops.
Yeah.
Like, just for being there.
The scenes where they fight the cops and then just seemingly no repercussions is pretty fucking outlandish too. Right.
The only one who can get away with it was Jason Segel's character because they said the line, the cops never found him after he kicked the back out of that squad car and ran away.
Right.
And he was so just normal looking that they probably wouldn't have. Like, if he'd been more punk looking, I would have been like, that's not believable. But the fact that he looked like a normie, like, I could say, okay, I can buy that he got away with that. Sure.
Yeah. When Steve-O and Bob got in the fight with cops, I mean, they're spending probably a couple years in jail for that.
It's weird that I always have to like think about the logistics of everything in movies. That's my my brain just works that way. But like, Bob spent, what they say, 3 weeks in a hospital.
Yeah.
Under quarantine. I mean, I guess you could argue that he just defaulted on his bill, but I guarantee he didn't have health insurance.
No.
And we've never had universal health care. So I'm just sitting there like I'm thinking the whole time like I guess you could argue like, oh, they probably gave him a bill and he just ignored it. Okay.
They wouldn't have kept him for three weeks.
No.
If he didn't have insurance.
No, they wouldn't have. Even in the 80s, they wouldn't have done that.
And he didn't have a job.
Right.
His dad clearly couldn't. I mean, maybe his dad was on fucking Medicaid or Medicare, so he could have gotten some benefits like that if he was under 26.
Yeah, maybe.
But probably not.
Yeah. And if he would have also come from a wealthy family like Steve-O, I would have been like, oh, okay, well, his parents just paid for it. But
also, Steve-O, at a minimum, is 22.
Yeah.
The way he talked about some 17-year-old girls was pretty gross.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just thinking that one character, and I realized, like, yes, it's true. There's a pretty wide age range in the punk scene just because it is such a small scene. I mean, I remember, like there would be, you'd go to a show, like a house show, and there would be like 16-year-olds there and 30-year-olds there. Sure. Mm-hmm. But like, it wasn't like, you weren't like hitting on them, or the people who were called out for it, at least in our scene. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe it was different in the 80s in Salt Lake City. It did seem kind of weird that he was just like, seemed to be kind of obsessed a little bit with that 17-year-old. He stopped himself short of saying that he wanted to hook up with her, but
but it was gross.
Right. Like if they would have like added some line of like, you know, like, hey, we all see her like a little sister or something like that.
Right.
I would have been like, okay, yeah, because there are like 16 and 17-year-olds hanging out when you're an adult at a house show. Like, there's nothing you can do about that.
Andy IY was 13 when she was hanging out with us, and we were 18 and 19.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
She was our little sister, and we protected her as such.
I thought, that was that scene made me pretty uncomfortable, honestly, when it was on. Yep. I was like, oh no.
I believe that the Central House kids knew the band that played, the quote-unquote British band.
Oh, ECP, Extreme Corporal Punishment.
Yeah. They're actually an American band.
They're called the $8 Experiment. Mm-hmm. And they are American,
and
yes.
I think the Central House kids knew them through the Gadgets, but I'm not for sure.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. And we moved to Kansas City and started hanging out at the Central House in 99, which was the same year this movie came out. So that would have been around the same time that they had just been in it. So
there was some decent music in it. I liked some of the music.
Yeah.
My favorite scene from back in the day was when Blondie started playing, when he met the cool smart girl that called him on his bullshit.
Yeah.
That was always my favorite scene back in the day, and I still liked it. Mostly because that's my favorite Blondie song, probably, because I'm a sappy guy. Jason Segel, I thought, was a pretty accurate representation of the kind of punk rocker he was. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the straight-laced guy that listens to Earth Crisis and wouldn't know was a hardcore motherfucker until you met him in the pit or something, or pissed him off.
Right.
Bob looked fine. I know a shit ton of dudes with mohawks and military jackets. I mean, it's pretty standard uniform. Steve-O looked like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
He looked like a cartoon character of what a punk rocker would be. Mm-hmm. I liked his leather jacket.
Yeah.
In the flashback when he was wearing the spiky leather jacket, I thought that was like decent costuming, but his mohawk was terrible.
Right.
And then he didn't. I mean, with the amount of shit he talked about being hardcore and punk and stuff, he dressed like a baby skate punk, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Who was just getting into punk rock and listens to Screeching Weasel and the Vandals and Rancid, and doesn't have like a firm grasp on punk rock and is just dipping their toes into it.
Right. And I recognize that because that's fucking how I used to dress.
Yeah, for sure. Totally.
And that was the type of punk I was into.
in high school. When I first got into punk, that was, for sure.
Yeah.
Very silly.
I don't think I was still like that in my mid-20s, though. Like, I think I'd moved on at that point. Yeah, and I thought the Till Schweiger's character, the European dude, I thought he was costumed well. Like that's basically how like those dudes dressed.
Yeah. I mean, maybe my only beef is with Steve-O.
I think so.
Yeah.
Even Annabeth Annabeth Gish, she was the Bob's love interest. She was a hippie basically. Like I was like, that's how this girl's dressed. That's pretty accurate.
And talked. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the pseudo intellectual nonsense in this fucking movie is off the charts. In particular, from Matthew Lillard's character is the worst perpetrator of this, but Annabeth Gish gives him a run for his money in some of the scenes.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm like an ant looking up at a human. Shut the fuck up.
I know.
And I think that was the point in the movie where I looked at my wife and I was like, these guys are fucking idiots.
I am Aladdin, and this is my lamp. I wished for you, and here you are.
You're like a poet, dude.
No, it's you who are the poet. Your face is like Ginsberg or Wilde or even Hawthorne.
Fuck yeah! What are you?
I'm an ant. Staring up at a human being, I wait with great intensity to be squashed by you.
You want to...
Right. And the satanic dude
so bad.
that he had the debate with, that dude was a fucking idiot too. Just
Yeah, I know they all are.
yeah.
The only one that had good dialogue calling out their shit was the Phoenix kid.
Oh, Summer Phoenix, Brandy.
Summer Phoenix.
Her character's name was Brandy.
Yeah, Brandy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the only one who had decent dialogue that challenged Steve-O's notion of punk rock. It was literally an hour and 25 minutes of him spouting off inane, gibberish, punk rock cliches, and then for like 5 minutes she was like, yeah, but maybe you're just a poser.
Right. And by the way,
him deciding that he was, and deciding to join the system.
Oh, that Jesus,
and sell out. And that scene was so fucking bad.
Jesus Christ, yeah. I forget the exact line, but he says something like, "I finally realized the only way to disrupt the system is from the inside," or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, wait, this is the conclusion that the movie has come to? Like, I understand the whole like him realizing he's a poser. I thought that would have been a good conclusion. They're like, that's fine. Just leave it at that. Like, maybe I'm actually the poser. Cool. There we go. Hey, we've got a good ending then. But then he's like, so I've decided to get inside the system so I can disrupt it. And it's like, oh, fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
You fucking liberal.
Right. And that's exactly who he became. His character became one of those insufferable fucking liberals who, today, even though I think he would probably end up being more of like a Tim Pool type of supporter.
Right.
But there's a part of him who is that insufferable liberal too, who just...
Oh, yeah. Like some fucking David Pakman ass bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Like, yeah, overly intellectual, without really being in touch with what the average person needs. And a lot of that is because a lot of the, his character and a lot of these people who ended up like this, they come from privilege.
Right, for sure.
And even if they spent a little time playing in the gutter, like Steve-O did, at the end of the day, they had a safety net to fall into.
I am almost curious about Punk's Not Dead, SLC Punk 2. Or Punk is Dead. Yeah. I'm almost curious to see how 20 years later they handle that.
Yeah.
My guess is not very well.
Well, you know who one of the supporting actors is for that movie, right? Have you not looked at the
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I don't know shit about it.
So yeah, the cast of Punk's Dead : SLC Punk 2 has a lot of people come back, and it has some new people. One of those people is a man named Colson Baker. Do you know who Colson Baker is? Do you know what he also goes by? Machine Gun Kelly.
Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, he is a supporting character, one of the main 3 characters, I think, in that movie.
Man, my buddy used to tour with a pretty well-known band.
Mm-hmm.
Started out as a guitar tech, later was a touring guitarist, and then became like an official member of this band. Went on tour, did Warped Tours, and had to deal with Machine Gun Kelly, and fucking hate him.
Yeah,
hate that dude, and talk mad shit on him, and that dude, according to my homie, fucking sucks. And they used to give him shit all the time. And he's like a huge baby and fucking sucks. Anyway,
if you're wondering if the second movie was some poser bullshit, Machine Gun Kelly is in it, so take that for what you will. I'm sure that it's filled with as much dumb pseudo-intellectual nonsense as the first one. And part of me thought that maybe that all that nonsense, monologuing and breaking the fourth wall would show growth over the film. Of like maybe by the end, and I guess by the very end he does say like, oh, I guess I am a poser, sure, but it's like a one-off line right at the end. But I would have thought that, like, you know, to tell a good story, if you are going to break the fourth wall like that and have that much monologuing, which I'm not a huge fan of, but if you're going to go with that style, then the dialogue should improve throughout the movie.
Right.
Like it should be a gradual improvement. And he doesn't get he doesn't get slapped back until the end when he meets Brandy. And
no, there's no character growth within him.
Yeah.
He's a shithead through the whole movie until the very end, where he just abruptly decides to change.
Right.
And it's not because of growth. It's not because of learning anything. It's just because he decides to. And it's very unfulfilling.
Also,
it's
ungratifying.
It just makes him out to be and remain an asshole.
Right.
He's shitty to his friends. He's shitty to his parents. He's shitty about politics. And at the end of the movie, he's just a different kind of shitty.
He's shitty about women. Like Jennifer Leon's character, who he is sort of dating.
Sounds like they're in an open relationship.
Right, they're in an open relationship. They even cover that. He says, we agreed to not be exclusive. But then he still beats that dude up that she's hooking up with, who, by the way, that guy's not, I mean, Jennifer Leon's also not cheating on anyone because she's not in a
committed
relationship, but also that dude definitely isn't, because he's just some dude,
right?
Who, like, there was a woman he's interested in who wants to hook up with him, and he's like, sure,
right?
Like, I mean,
if he had those feelings, he should have expressed it to her before that situation even happened.
And
or if that situation happened and he felt that way, then you reassess the rules of the relationship. Like, hey. I didn't know how much I liked you. I saw you with that guy, and it really hurt and made me realize how much I cared.
Right.
But he also said he didn't care about that. He viewed her as his property.
Right.
That's fucked up.
Which tracks for that character.
Yeah.
Like, it unfortunately does. Like, and I would have been less mad if he'd just been like, bitch, and stormed off or something like that. Right. I'd been like, that's still shitty, but at least, like, he didn't, like, he assaulted that dude. I hate the way that the punk scene there was kind of portrayed as being just like openly macho and violent for just the sake of it.
So our friend Alex said that the scene in Oklahoma was kind of that way. Like, very misogynist and pretty violent. I don't know to the extent.
That's kind of how that Southern California scene was too, at least in the 80s and early 90s.
He was very surprised by the Kansas scene and how inclusive and friendly it was, because I guess it wasn't like that in Oklahoma.
If all you're going to do is push the same bullshit macho, I'm a dude and I own you because you're my woman culture, but just be dressed as a punk, what's the fucking point? You're not subverting anything. You're just wearing a punk costume while promoting the same bullshit macho culture.
Yep.
That's all you're doing. You're cosplaying punk. Also, the elephant in the room, man, they sure did drop the F slur a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I realized it was the time.
That was partially because it was in the 80s, partially because it was the 90s. I mean, in our punk scene, we did not use the F slur.
No. I think at the beginning, like maybe in the early mid 90s, I still heard some people saying it. But by the end of the 90s, it had definitely it was seen as not cool to use the F slur.
Right.
Though people still use the R slur a lot, well into the 2000s. Yeah, pretty liberal use of the F slur. I heard it the one time with the other Mod character, Adam Pascal's character, Mod Eddie.
Right.
But I was like, okay, maybe that's just the one time. Then they used it a bunch more times, and I was like, okay, this is becoming a pattern.
When they were in the car going to Wyoming to get booze, Eddie was defending his
sexuality,
going on about it, and then they gave him shit and used the F slur.
I can give a shit what the rednecks in this town think about me. I know I'm not gay. Ladies know me. I have no problem with gay guys. As a matter of fact, they are some of the coolest guys that I know. The only reason half these guys start shit, it's not because they want to fight. It's because they want to fuck.
I don't know, man. If somebody called me something that I wasn't, I could see getting mad.
The problem with somebody giving you shit about being gay, it's not that they're wrong about you, man. It's that they're giving you shit. Get it?
So do you like this music, man?
Yeah. It rocks.
I think it's for posers.
Well, I can give a back to you. No, fuck yourself.
Which, I mean, I get it. It was just a friendly ribbing or whatever and didn't actually mean anything harmful by it, but it still sucks to hear.
Yeah.
It's really, it's weird how jarring that word has become.
I also want to point out too, when they're on the road to Wyoming, and this drove me nuts when I was watching the movie. When I was younger, late teens to mid 20s, I traveled a lot. I drove around the country a lot, and I did spend some time in Utah, in Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
They are not on the road to Wyoming. They are on I-80 heading west to Wendover, Nevada, because they're driving through the Salt Flats. And I saw that, and the nerd in me, it just drove me nuts. I was like, motherfucker, that's I-80 west, and you fucking know it. That is not how you get to Wyoming. Yep. But I don't know. I think they chose Wyoming, and they actually shot in Wyoming when they shot the liquor store scene. That actually was in a town called Evanston, Wyoming. And they shot the whole movie on location. Like, they were in Salt Lake City. They shot in Salt Lake City. They shot in Evanston, Wyoming. So I'll give them credit for that. I love it when movies shoot on location. I hate when everything is like, hey, we're in, this city. Like, hey, we're in New York and they're shooting in LA. And you're like, well, that's obviously, why is there a palm tree there? Fuck you. Like, just shoot on location, or just change the location in the fucking script. Nobody cares. This is obviously location dependent, SLC Punk, but I appreciate that they do shoot on location. And that liquor store in Wyoming, man, we've all been through liquor stores like that in the rectangle states.
That's another one of my favorite scenes is Bob saying, "We're from England. That's probably why we sound so weird to you."
that was a standout scene for his character too. I love that scene. I love the way he played it. It was great.
Also, he looks like Robert De Niro with a mohawk in Taxi Driver.
He does. I wonder if that was on purpose.
I don't know. Yeah. It's crazy how similar they look.
Also, was Steve-O's character, is it a movie canon that he actually has 666 tattooed on his ass?
I hope so.
Does Matthew Lillard have 666 tattooed on his ass?
I doubly hope so.
I also appreciated that they covered the fact that they were in an ABC state. For those of you who don't know, ABC stands for Alcohol Beverage Control.
Where'd you get the beer? Wyoming, where else?
This actually needs some explanation. Beers in supermarkets in Utah is weak, 3 points instead of the normal 6 points of alcohol. It's a religious influence, a pain in the ass. But to me, it makes no sense. If you got alcohol, you got alcohol. So why 3 instead of 6? You know a drunk's just gonna drink twice as many beers to get drunk. So not only do you have a drunk on your hands, but you got drunk on your hands who's fat and gross. There's nothing worse. So if you want real beer, you have two choices. A, the state-run liquor store.
You see, it's here where you can buy regular beer. There are all of 3 stores in Salt Lake City to buy it, and their hours sucked. Oppression. Also, not just beer, these were the only places that one could buy any alcohol outside of private clubs. You could get whiskey, gin, wine. Here's where they kept it. And here's the worst part.
IDs, boys.
See now, this teller, right, he's not just a teller. He's a cop. I mean, this guy right there, he's a fucking cop. So we buy beer, me and Bob, and this guy's calling a squad car to follow us home.
And I also used to live in an ABC state. I lived in Virginia, which is an ABC state. It's not as strict as Utah, but yeah, like that is accurate. Sometimes it's easier just to drive to a different state. And even in Kansas, even though Kansas is not an ABC state, on Sundays we'd have to drive to Missouri if we wanted booze.
You could buy and the 3-2 beer that he talked about in that movie, that used to be all you could get at grocery stores.
Yeah.
And convenience stores in Kansas.
Yep.
You would have to go to a proper liquor store to get 3-2. There's one that's alcohol by volume and one that's alcohol by something else.
Yeah.
And it only works out to like a beer's worth of difference in a 6-pack between 3-2 and 6-point beer. But yeah, you were unable to get 6-point beer at convenience stores, and you could not buy wine or liquor at convenience stores or grocery stores in Kansas.
Right.
You still cannot.
Yeah.
You can buy alcohol on Sundays now, and I believe that grocery stores and convenience stores carry 6-point beer now.
Oh, do they?
It's not 3-2 anymore. I don't think so.
Well, and back in the day, liquor stores on weekdays at least, they'd close at, what was it, 10 p.m.? They closed super early.
11. I think
11, yeah,
11.
Yeah, well, in Virginia, it was, you couldn't buy different, like you could buy beer, and you could buy 6-point beer even at like 7-Eleven and in grocery stores. You could buy beer. That's fine. But if you wanted to buy wine or liquor, you had to go to different stores. Like if there was a wine store, it had to be a wine store. They couldn't sell other alcohol. And if you wanted liquor, you had to go to a government-owned by the state of Virginia, liquor store, ABC store, and there were only a handful. I lived in Norfolk, Virginia. There were only a handful in Norfolk, and that's if you wanted spirits, that's where you had to go. So fortunately, I was just kind of a beer drinker around then, so I could still go to 7-Eleven and buy beer. I don't think you could get 40s in Norfolk, though. I think you had to go out of Norfolk to buy 40s. They had some weird rules in Virginia, and it was all dependent on like where you, like they don't do counties in Virginia either. Or at least not in the part of Virginia I lived in. If you lived in Norfolk City, that was it. The next level up from Norfolk City was the state of Virginia.
Oh, wow.
There was nothing in between. So you could, like, if you drove to Virginia Beach, there were just different laws. But yeah, I remember, like, I've been to Utah a bunch of times, and I do remember, like, stocking up on beer in Colorado before I crossed the border.
One of the things the movie did bring up that I thought was accurate, and you've brought it up multiple times, about growing up in a more conservative environment makes you more radical when you're
for sure.
in a counterculture. I mean, he did go on a rant about how Utah's super conservative, Mormon, blah, 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 and that if you're in any way outside of the norm, it's even harder, so you become more radicalized, even though he's not radicalized hardly at all.
Yeah, they definitely got some things right. Like we talked about earlier, the whole tribalism thing seemed kind of weird to me. I don't think we had those hard lines in Wichita in the 90s that they seemed to have in Salt Lake City in the 80s, apparently.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that they would be that delineated either, since supposedly it was such a small scene, and Steve-O and Bob were the only 2 real punk rockers there.
According to them,
think there would be you would think there would be a lot more crossover between other smaller scenes. I refuse to call it tribes. That's fucking stupid. Probably the only really good take about punk rock in the movie is who fucking cares who started it between the
Yeah.
Ramones and the Sex Pistols. It doesn't fucking matter.
The thing that pissed me off, talking about who started punk rock music. Was it Sex Pistols in England? Was it the Ramones and the Velvet Underground in New York? It's the Ramones and the Sex Pistols. Who cares who started it? It's music. I don't know who started it, and I don't give a fuck. The one thing I do know is that we did it harder. Damn, we did it faster, and we definitely did it with more love, baby.
It doesn't.
And to be honest, both bands kind of suck.
Right. Agree. Yeah, why are we making them our fucking flagship bands?
Right.
Like, they don't fucking deserve it. And they weren't the first punk bands anyway. There was proto-punk in both countries before that.
Right.
So they weren't even
Sex
the
Pistols
beginning
were
of
not
the
first
scene.
punk rock band.
Right.
Neither were the Ramones.
They're just probably the most famous early punk bands.
They were the first punk bands to make it in popular culture.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I thought that was weird that they went from that point too, because it's like someone who's really into punk would not mark the Sex Pistols and the Ramones as the beginning of punk in either country. That was one of the few times where he could kind of stop being nationalistic for a second.
Right. Yeah.
And realize like, oh, this does cross borders.
But he immediately said that America does it better and harder and blah,
right.
blah, blah.
I mean,
which again, like,
yeah, it
makes
depends.
me think that the filmmaker who supposedly this is loosely based upon doesn't know shit about British punk rock, because like, I guarantee you that fucking Doom and Hiatus and a lot of that shit, fucking even Napalm Death, was a lot harder than anything they were doing in LA at the fucking time.
Well, and the same thing with, the same thing in the UK is in the US. Sometimes the harder scene isn't New York. Sometimes the harder scene isn't London. Right. Sometimes it's, fucking Birmingham, or fucking Scunthorpe or some random little like British town you've barely heard of. They may have a harder fucking punk scene than London, or like Reading. Reading had a pretty good and pretty rough punk scene because it's a working class fucking town. All right, we're going to go into our positives and negatives. We're going to talk about things that we like about the movie, things that we don't like about the movie. And no matter what we think about the movie, we are both required to give this movie some compliments.
I think that production-wise, this was a competently made film for the 90s. I think it was shot well. I think it looks pretty good. I only noticed a couple sound design hiccups that bothered me. There was Eddie's character when they were driving to Wyoming for beer. The audio wasn't synced up for like a split second. And that was the only thing I noticed. Mis-synced dialogue drives me fucking bananas.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge bummer for me when I see it. And this film did the sound design really well, synced everything up. It was fine. Bob was a great character, acted very well. Same with Jason Segel's character. I think acting wise, they did well with what they were given. I think probably the writing is more the failure than the acting. And I thought the music was, while a bit pedestrian, they did have some good shit in there. Like the Adolescence was in there. Fear is pretty standard issue for a punk rock 80s movie, but it wasn't beef bologna or anything. It was a decent Fear song for Fear. And some of the costuming, basically the costuming except for Steve-O was good, I think. And I mostly enjoyed watching it, even though I was frustrated with a lot of the poor political takes, I guess. Right. But that, again, I think that's a problem with the writing, not with the acting.
I agree with you. My likes are, or my positives for the movie. I agree that I liked that they had a punk soundtrack, even though I didn't like every song and band on the soundtrack. I knew people in the scene who did like that. Those were common bands to like in the scene. That was accurate.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of movies before that are, punk movies that don't have a punk soundtrack. They have bands that like people think are punk, but it's like, it'll be like nothing against them, but it'll be like the Pixies or the Clash. And it's just like, okay, well, I mean, those aren't really punk bands, but nice try. Right. This actually did have a legit punk soundtrack. Whether you like the songs or not is irrelevant. I felt the soundtrack was authentic. I also liked some of the performances, in particular Jason Segel, Michael Gourjon, and I thought, even though I didn't love her character because of her shitty line about, why don't you get a job? I thought Jennifer Leon still did a good job in the character. I thought she acted it well, and all three of those people, the reason I liked those kind of standout characters the most is because they felt the most authentic to people I've actually met before in the scene. Like all three of them, Jason Segel, Jennifer Leon, and Michael Gourjon, I could see knowing all of these people as real people. I liked some of the way it was shot. I thought it was shot well for the most part. And honestly, like Bob's death scene, that scene, it got me. I thought that was probably Matthew Lillard's best scene in the movie. That was when I was like, it was near the end of the movie, and for the first time, I thought, I believe Matthew Lillard right now.
Fucking poser. Only posers die, you fucking idiot! Now what we can do for friends? No, I don't have friends! Please wake up now! Please, I'm sorry! Oh, fuck. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. Oh, my God. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready.
I believe him. It was the first time in the entire movie I thought he was authentic.
He's a very capable actor. I think he's a good actor, and I like him as an actor. I don't think he was right for the role.
Right, agree.
But yeah, that moment was really, really good. And he acted his ass off in that scene.
Right. That was that was one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. Yeah, like it hit me because, and part of that is too because in the punk scene, like you know people who die early. There's a lot of people who die young for dumb shit like that, overdose or they unalive themselves or they get into a drunk driving accident or all kinds of it's a lifestyle that if you live it that hard when you're young, there's a higher than normal chance that you will die young. And I think that's one of the reasons why the scene hits so hard. Yeah.
And certainly know people who die young.
I would like to ask Matthew Lillard.
I've lost track.
Yeah. I actually want to ask Matthew Lillard if he pulled, like if he knew somebody who had died recently and if he pulled that out for that scene. I would like to ask him that question because it felt like it seemed like Matthew Lillard actually believed he'd fucking died.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just make your nose run like that.
Right.
From crying.
That was authentic.
He had snot dripping out of his nose. He was crying so hard.
Right. And I don't know if his lines were scripted or if that they were ad-libbed. They felt kind of ad-libbed. It felt like he just pulled that out of his soul. But yeah, that was that brought the movie back for me for a little bit.
Okay, for my negatives, I mean, I mostly already addressed them in past conversations. My biggest pet peeve, one of my biggest pet peeves is inaccurate representation of drug use. And this definitely offends that crime. Yeah, the whole, I mean, it's like a novice entry point into punk rock. The ideas of punk rock are the most basic, pedestrian, views of punk rock. It's if you looked up punk rock in a dictionary, it would give you the premise of this movie. It is very, very surface level, and not very deep in its understanding of what punk rock is. And my last negative is just Matthew Lillard not being right for the role. Fine actor, not right for the part.
And I think part of that too is because we just associate him so much. He's such a 90s guy.
Yeah.
Like
he talks like a 90s guy.
Yeah.
Like it's his vernacular, his cadence,
right?
Like everything about how he talks is that 90s guy. Like I see the dude from Scream.
Right. He's so Gen X, which is not right for being the mid 80s. If they had just made this take place in fucking 1998, I'd have been like, fine. Yeah.
It would have solved that problem 100%.
I don't know why they needed it to be in 1985 specifically. I mean, I realize that's probably when the writer and director grew up, experienced it in Salt Lake City. But if we were making, if we were going to make a movie about our scene, and we cast somebody, like if we cast somebody who is just so associated with the modern era, I would just change when it takes place.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, okay, well, it just takes place now then.
Right.
You know, if you can't find an actor who can embody that era, then just change when it takes place. It's fine.
Right. I mean, it's, again, no diss on Matthew Lillard, but he has such a way of speaking and moving and acting and everything that it's just so fucking 90s, at least in this movie. Like he's not an 80s punk rocker at all.
Yeah, my negatives definitely fall along that line, and there's so much breaking the fourth wall. If you told me that this movie was based on a one-man show that they turned into a movie, but that it started as just one guy, like it gave like old-timey one-man show, like, you know, the characters in my neighborhood show were crazy. When I was growing up, we had old man Smitty, who was our mailman. Hey, Smitty, I'm trying to deliver the mail. Okay, Smitty, I'll talk to you later. Then we had the milkman. Like, it felt like a fucking one-man show, that had a bunch of different actors playing the different people. Like, and that took me out of it every fucking time. I was like, why am I watching a one-man show? The characters are too cartoony. That thought entered my head at the beginning of the movie, but I was like, okay, so they're going to do this for, you know, a few scenes to get things started so you get to know people. Is it sloppy writing? Sure. But a lot of movies start that way. It's a common way of writing. Yeah. So I wasn't going to fault it for that, especially because it is a DIY project. So I was like, okay, I'm going to let this slide, but they need to eventually get into the plot, which never really happened.
It's like a really shitty punk rock version of the Vagina Monologues. It's the Mohawk Monologues.
Oh my God, that's perfect. Yes. The Mohawk Monologues. There we go. We're going to go town to town. Is that our next podcast?
Yeah.
All the pseudo-intellectualism too, just, it just was like, it made me cringe every fucking time. Every time they got into that pseudo-intellectualism, anytime Annabeth Gish's character started talking, anytime Matthew Lillard's character broke the fourth wall,
it's like the cringiest shit.
It was terrible. And, you know, Annabeth Gish is not a bad actor. I've seen her in other stuff. Like, she's a perfectly capable actor. She's good. So I don't think it was on her. I think that's how they wanted her to play it.
Yeah, I feel like the writing.
That's the writing. That's probably how the director directed her. Just like, no, I need you to be more like this. So, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I feel like she was at least looked the part she was playing. So I'll give her that. And I'm sure she did the best she could with the material, but
maybe
her character
he directed them that way because he doesn't respect the punk scene. Maybe he thinks punks are that surface level and stupid.
Maybe. And there definitely are punks who are.
Could be, yeah, for sure. I mean, this whole movie could be a critique on punk rock culture, just wrapped up as a celebration of it.
Right. Yeah. And like we said, it has a huge cult following. People love this movie.
Yeah.
So much so that I think the sequel was crowdfunded.
What? Nobody?
Because the studio would have never signed off on a sequel.
Nobody asked for that, but maybe somebody did ask for it.
I mean, a movie that only made half of what it cost, a movie that only brought in less than $300,000 at the box office.
That really surprises me, because I remember when it came out, it seemed like everybody liked that movie.
I didn't see it till it was out on video. So I don't know how. I wasn't around for it at the box office. I don't know what I was doing at the time. I don't know. But I don't remember it playing in any movie theaters around us.
Yeah, I don't either.
But we had it at the video store. So I watched it with you, and then I watched it, when I worked at the video store.
I feel like we watched it a lot at the Central House.
Yeah, they had it there. I don't know if they liked it or if they just had it.
I feel like it was on a lot.
It is one of the few representations of punk that you could get at the time.
Yeah, that's true. There was not many media, particularly movie stories about punk rock. So that might have something to do with it.
This is before
there still isn't a whole lot, but
right. But and I still haven't seen it yet. But there's Green Room. There's Bomb City, which is a far superior movie to this one.
Way better, yeah.
Which portrays a lot of the same stuff, but done in a way better way.
And it's an actual biopic.
Yeah,
and it actually feels like that movie captured what our punk rock scene felt like to me better than any movie that I've seen portraying punk rock. I mean, it felt like the Kansas scene.
It did. Yeah. Even though it was in Amarillo, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you haven't seen Bomb City, if you want to watch a better version of this movie, watch Bomb City. There you go. It's way better.
It's I believe it's free on Tubi, and also if you have a library card, you can get a Canopy account, and you can check movies out for free, just like at the library. And actually, Canopy has a shit ton of punk rock documentaries and movies on there for free.
Yeah.
Not SLC Punk, though.
I think one of the things that I can give the movie credit for, too, is, it did portray, like, the fact that, punks do come from different class backgrounds. Steve-O, obviously, part of the bourgeois class, grew up upper middle class to wealthy. And then you've got Bob, who grew up just dirt fucking poor. And in the punk scene, there's not that hierarchy isn't in the punk scene. There's
no class distinction. It's all
right.
It's all community.
Yeah. I like that aspect of it. How would you make it better? How are you going to make it better?
So, one of the things that kind of, I think, muddles the narrative a little bit is the time frame. The sequence of events of this movie are very confused. I would say that the main part of the story happens over 3 days, maybe 2 days. I don't really know because it jumps around so much. So if you take out all of the flashbacks, what happens is they have a party, and then there's another party, and then Bob dies, and then Steve-O decides to go to Harvard. It seems like that storyline takes place over 2 or 3 days, but it's really difficult to parse that out because it jumps back and forth so much.
Right.
So I'm not saying that it shouldn't do that, but it should give the viewer a better idea of when actual events are taking place.
Yeah.
Because it confuses it a little bit. And I think that might help the viewer have a better understanding of how long Steve-O's revelations are happening, because maybe that's part of the reason why it seems like, asshole through the whole movie, and then 5 minutes before the movie ends he decides to change his whole entire life out of nowhere. Like if there was a time reference there, it might make it less jarring, might make it more palatable and understandable.
Yeah, I would do either one of the following. I would either recast the role and get somebody who's less associated with the 90s and less wrapped up in 90s culture than Matthew Lillard was at the time. Or I would just change the era in which it takes place and say, this is contemporary to right now, 1998. That would be the first change I'd make. And then, yeah, I agree with you. I would make it narratively make more sense.
Right.
And
like
be
it doesn't
less
have to
all
be
over the place. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be linear.
Right.
But there needs to be distinctions. And that's what it lacks. There's no distinct A, B, C, D event happening. It's so all over the place. And I don't have any problem with time jumps.
Sure.
Just explain it a little bit.
And I would also make Matthew Lillard's character, I would make him grow more gradually throughout the film.
Right.
Like he can start out as cartoony as he was through the entire film. Like it's fine if he starts out that way. But yeah, have him grow, have him go from thinking anarchy is, I just want chaos, because anarchy, to actually understanding what anarchy actually means.
Sure.
And,
I mean, there's a 4-year span there from when he's got his stupid fake mohawk.
Yeah.
That's graduating high school. And then by the end of the movie, he's finished college.
Yeah.
Like, all those flashbacks could have shown personal growth.
Yeah.
In him, and it does not.
Right.
He doesn't change.
Yeah.
Even at the end, when he decides to buy into the system, as his dad says.
Yeah. I didn't sell out, I bought in. Yeah.
He's not changing. He's just moving to a different set of a different scene. His ideals, his personality, all that. He still seems like an immature shithead. Just that he's going to go to Harvard now. It's not a personality change. It's just a jarring shift in lifestyle.
Right. And
it's weird.
He's never clear about how he plans to disrupt this. Like what's the end? Is he going to try to make things better for people who are less fortunate than him, like his buddy who's now begging in front of a mall? Like,
it doesn't sound like it.
Is that how he's going to disrupt the system? Like how is he disrupting the system?
He seems like the worst kind of punk rock narcissist that I can think of. Like he doesn't give a fuck about anything except himself, and that's why he has such a stupid, uninformed view of what anarchy is.
Yeah.
Because all he cares about is himself. And he shows that throughout the movie, and he doesn't ever care about anybody more than himself in the movie.
Right. And it is like, it is a very American, like, punk story. Yeah, that hyper individualism that just is rampant through the conservative wing of the punk movement, if you want to call it that. But, people who want the punk aesthetic, but are conservatives, that hyper individualism and kind of like weird patriotism, that's his character. That's him.
Yeah, for sure.
We all know dudes like him. I'll go first for so we've got 2 rating scales. The first one is how punk is a movie. There are 3 it's a scale of 3. There's Poser, which is the least amount of punk. There's Punk-em a Rocker, which is a movie that's pretty punk. And then there's Upper Crust, which is the most punk a movie can be. And then we also have another scale where we measure how good we think the movie is. And for that scale, I think we should use Mickey's Malt Liquor Grenades.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that's what they drink in the movie. Yeah. And we'll call it a 12-pack.
Terrible.
So
anything that comes in a green bottle is fucking awful.
Yeah. I did used to drink the Mickey's Malt Liquor 40s because they were available. It was before I was 21, so it was just what was available and what was around. Yeah, but then I upgraded to Old English malt liquor after that.
Fuck yeah.
I'm going to get... So for me, this movie, on our first scale, while watching it teetered between 2. And so I was thinking about giving it a Punk-em a Rocker because of the soundtrack and that there was some fair punk representation in the movie. But there are 2 reasons it knocked it onto the other section of the scale. So I'm giving it a poser because of the line, "I'm an anarchist. I don't believe there should be any rules, only chaos." And the line, "I finally realized the only way to disrupt the system is from the inside."
It's gonna be a lawyer and playing the goddamn system. And that was that. It was my old man. He knew. So what else could I do? I mean, there's no future in anarchy. I mean, let's face it. But when I was into it, there was never a thought of the future. I mean, we were certain that the world was gonna end. But when it didn't, I had to do something. So fuck it. I could always be a litigator in New York and piss the shit out of the judges. I mean, that was me, a troublemaker, the future. The guy that was one of those guys that my parents so arrogantly saved the world for. So we could fuck it up. We can do a hell of a lot more damage in the system than outside of it. That was the final irony, I think. That, and, well, this. Fuck you if you're already thinking it. I guess when all was said and done, I was nothing more than a goddamn trendy-ass poser.
That is some poser-ass shit, so this movie gets a poser, because that is, at the end of the day, that is the conclusion the movie comes to.
I'm holding the silence for a while.
For shock and awe?
I think that you're right.
Mm-hmm.
While there is representation of punk rock, it does have a good soundtrack, or it does have a punk rock soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, the misrepresentation of punk rock deserves a poser rating.
I really wanted to give this movie at least a Punk-em a Rocker, but I just can't do it. I can't. Yeah.
How many
Mickey's Malt Liquor Grenades am I going to give it out of 12? I'm going to give it 6 out of 12, which I feel like is generous. And a lot of that is because of some of the performances that I liked and some of the scenes that I liked with those performances. And Bob's death scene. That kind of bumped it up to a 6 for me. That scene alone I thought was really powerful. And also, like I said, Jason Segel's scenes were spectacular. And I love the Till Schweiger character. I liked his scenes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, Michael Gourjean and Jennifer Leon did a great job too. So I'll give it a 6 because of the performances.
I will grant you your 6.
Mm-hmm.
And because you talked me down from a Punk-em a Rock and you're giving it a 6, I am going to give it a 5. I was going to give it a 6. I was going to give it a 6, but I decided that was too middling. And since you're giving it a 6, I didn't want to give the same score as you, and I'm not going to give it a higher score than 6.
Right.
So
it does not deserve it.
It was only appropriate to go down. I won't ever watch it again, but I have enjoyed parts of it when I have seen it. But I think overall, the story is bad.
Yeah.
The movie is fine. The story is bad.
Yeah.
There's a bad story. Steve-O was a bad character. An annoying character. And a giant fucking poser. So, yeah, that's my reasoning.
It hurt me to see Matthew Lillard in this role. Because I like him. I think he's a good actor.
I didn't like him when it came out. I have since grown to like him quite a bit.
Yeah.
Seeing his other work post 90s, I think that he has, as an actor, calmed down.
Yeah, he can play subtle now. Yeah.
When he was not good at subtle.
No.
He was very amped up, very animated,
which was kind of the style at the time. It's a very 90s way to play things.
Right. Yeah. I appreciate him more now as a more subtle actor. I think he's much better.
So, yeah, that's it for SLC Punk. I really enjoyed doing this one, even though I agree I'll probably never watch the movie again. I still enjoyed doing this for the podcast. Our next movie we're going to do is a documentary from 2012 called A Band Called Death. It's a documentary on the 1970s punk trio Death and their newfound popularity decades after they disbanded. I know I had never heard of them before I saw this documentary. I think I saw it in 2016, 2017, I want to say. I did not know about them. I like them now, and actually my son loves the song Politicians in My Eyes. Like it's a song he requests on the way to school every day now, which is hilarious. But yeah, we're going to have a special guest for that episode. Jerbear, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So my time spent as a programmer for the Tallgrass Film Festival has allowed me to meet a lot of really rad people that I have kept in touch with over the years. And we actually screened A Band Called Death, I believe in 2014, and brought one of the directors and filmmakers, Mark Covino, to town. And he and I have remained in contact since then. And I have reached out to him, and I think that he is going to come on and be a guest on that episode. And I think we're going to do things a little bit differently. And we're going to more talk about his experience making the film and some of the trials and tribulations that he's run into after release and distribution of the film. I think he's got a lot of insights into the film industry, particularly with how distribution deals work and how damaging it can be for the careers of independent filmmakers. So I'm really interested and excited to talk to him about making A Band Called Death and what he experienced in the process and afterward, after the release and distribution of it. So if you are interested in filmmaking and interested in the industry as a whole, I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. So you should definitely check it out. And I'm super stoked that Mark agreed to be a guest. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And we've both all obviously already seen this movie. So spoiler alert, I enjoyed this documentary. Like I already know I liked it. I've seen it 2 times. I enjoyed it both times I watched it. So it holds up. And so, yeah, we probably don't need to get in. Like it's. I feel like it's going to be more beneficial for us to talk to the director and get those insights than it's going to be for us just to talk about a movie that we already know that we like. So,
yeah, it's and you know one of the criticisms that he gets is that Death isn't a punk band. They weren't the first punk band, and nowhere in the movie does he ever claim that they were the first punk band. That's something that was put upon the documentary by other people. It's a documentary about a band that was forgotten to time and regained notoriety and fame through one of their kids and through this documentary.
I think later there are people, and I would also describe them as a proto-punk band, but that's a label put upon them by us, the audience. That is that's not a label they ever claimed. They never claimed to be a punk band or proto-punk band. They just wanted to play rock music, and they were, a black band from Detroit playing rock music, which was really unique at that time. So, yeah, I think there are a lot of labels that people put upon them that they never put upon themselves. Yeah, listen to that episode when it comes out. We're going to try to do these more often, so hopefully there will be less than a month between these this time.
I'm looking forward to watching a film that I know already that I like.
Yeah.
And don't have to like sit through some middling, I don't want to say garbage, that's a little harsh, but
yeah,
middling narratives or documentaries that are just okay and seem more like a chore to watch than
right.
something enjoyable to watch.
I think one of the things I want to avoid with this podcast, even though it's a lot of fun to do bad movies, I want to avoid just becoming the punk version of How Did This Get Made? That's what I want to avoid. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're doing. We're not doing the same thing they're doing. We are reviewing punk movies, whether they're good, bad, or mediocre. So I do want to start doing more movies that we like, or at least suspect that we like. Mm-hmm. And we've done, I mean, we've had some that have hit the middle of the road, like the 1983 Suburbia. Like, that movie was enjoyable for some reasons. But we've also done the 90s Suburbia, which we hated.
Right. And my fondness for The Day the Country Died sure did dwindle quickly once I started watching it again.
Right. Yeah.
It's informative, but it's not terribly engaging.
Right. So A Band Called Death documentary, it's not just a bunch of talking heads. Like the other documentaries we've done have all been talking head documentaries. This is not that. This is a different documentary. So this is made by a filmmaker who, at least based on just this film, knew what they were doing. They knew how to put together a documentary to make it compelling and interesting and tell a good story while also telling the real story.
Right. Now he's got a couple other movies, a couple other documentaries that are really good too, that I've watched, and he does do way more than just talking heads. So.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to doing that one. Thanks everybody for listening. We're going to play the trailer for A Band Called Death right after this. Yeah, listen to that, or just look it up on YouTube yourself. Thanks for listening. Please go to our website, www.prairiepunkpress.com, and you can find all of our socials there. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We're on Threads.
Should we make a Blue Sky? I think that's where everybody's going.
Oh, okay. No, we might make a Blue Sky. Yeah. So we'll let you know if we do make a Blue Sky, and you can find us there if we do that. Also, delete your Twitter /X. We did.
Fuck Elon Musk.
Fuck Elon Musk. Delete it if you got it still. You don't need it. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
It was a great time. It was that Motown time.
And you know, here we are in the middle of all of this playing rock and roll.
What do you say now?
Nobody was making music like that in '73.
Three black brothers from Detroit, Michigan.
What were they called?
They were called Death. That's a good name.
Have you lost your mind?
Told us you guys might have a record deal if you change the name.
Absolutely not. We are fighting to maintain our identity.
It's pretty hard to be black playing rock because you had to be Motown if you were black.
White boy music. We got turned down by every major label.
I just put the tapes in a safe place. I didn't think about it.
One day the world's going to come looking for the Death Master tapes.
There's been hardcore history sitting up in that attic, and no one's known about it.
We're just now discovering this band that had been sort of lying in wait.
Something they pressed 30 years ago, selling for $800.
Dad, why didn't you tell me? He says they're playing your music at underground parties here.
It's been 34 years since the songs have been heard.
It's one of those things that keeps you going to the record store, hoping for another great story like that.
The ultimate
I don't know of a story like that. I don't know of one.